my first focus is getting them into the form like we did yesterday. Okay? Getting them into the y equals part of things. Once I do that, then I'll be able to do everything that we need. So, if I want to write an equation in slope-intercept form in this line, the m is always my slope. The b, and I'm not quite sure why they chose b, b is always going to be my y-intercept. So here, if it says a slope of -4, that's my m. If they say a y-intercept of 3, that's my b. Right, because if this is the form that I'm always going to use, and we're going to want to get used to seeing it this way, I'm always going to be plugging in numbers to those same two places. Okay, m is going to be the slope. B is going to be the y-intercept. So, yes, yep, that's not going to switch around on us ever. So when I go to do this, I've got y equals, well, I know what m is because I know the slope, -4. I still got to add the x with it, though. And then the y-intercept is +3, so I'll put a plus in there with it. I'm done. If they ask me to write the equation, I substitute those two numbers in, and I'm a happy camper. And soon we'll be able to do that where that's going to let us graph a line. So when we get to this next part, okay, the slope and the y-intercept, we're just doing the same thing. Because slope is always my m, and the y-intercept is always my b. And I'm always going to just plug into those two spots. So, what would my equation look like in number 2? Okay. Now, some of you may say, could I put y equals 8x plus -2? Yes, you could. The only reason I usually would avoid that is when you go to graphics, sometimes you look at that and you're like, well, wait a minute. It's plus and minus, so which way do I go? So I prefer that you just put it as -3. But again, it's one of those things that if you go ahead and put it that way, you can. Yes, ma'am. We're heading that way. We are heading that way. So, if we... All right, we're going to do number 3, and then we're going to jump into the graphing part. And I'm trying to start helping. I think some of you know some of this already. This is good. All right, what's number 3 going to look like? Y equals -2x. That's my slope. -1. And again, I'm just substituting stuff in. This is going to be simple. Yes, this would be a -7. Yes. So now, what if we change things up a little bit? It says write an equation slope-intercept form for each graph shown. Okay. When I get down to here, I still need to figure out my two parts. I need to find first, I need to find my y-intercept, and second, I need to find my slope. And I can get both of those things from the picture. The y-intercept is going to be the easier one, because remember, yep, it's going to be 0 and some number. So right, like here, as soon as I see 0 in that first number, or I look on my y-axis, if I need to, I'll color it in a little deeper here. Whatever point I see here, that's going to tell me my y-intercept, which here would be -2. Well, let's find out. Once I have that, there's one last thing I need to do. And that last thing I need to do is to figure out the slope. Now, I can do it one of two ways. I can either use the 2 points and use the formula that we've been using, or, faster way, I can count how much I go up and how much I go over to get from one point to the other. Nope. Unless, right, nope. So like here, I went up 2, which would be +2. And I went right 1, which would be +1. So my slope would be 2 over 1. So I went up and right. We talked about if I go up for slope, it's positive. If I go right, it's also positive. So once I know those two things, I'm ready to do my equation. Because again, when I'm doing the equation part, I'm just following this. But, ooh, I know what m is. It's 2, or I can put 2 over 1. Either one's fine. And then my y-intercept is my b, minus 2. And that makes sense. Here's my y-intercept. And I go up 2 and over 1. And I can keep doing that all the way up the line. So if I'm doing that same thing for 6, let's say, same rule applies. I start to look, I'm like, okay, here's my y-axis. I gotta find the point right here where it's crossing. So my y-intercept is 3. But now the slope is what I have to do a little work on. And I gotta figure out, okay? So if I'm going this way, I'm going up 3. Up 3, is that positive or negative? Okay, up 3 is positive. Correct. Because to get over here now, I'm going left. Well, if I go left 3, that's minus or negative 3. Can I reduce this? Okay, 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. So when I make my equation, again, my slope is my m, so negative 1x, and my b is my y-intercept, plus 3. I cannot. Okay? I'm going to do 7 first, and then I'll do 9. So I want to see one where it's normal, and then I will switch it. So I promise it's the second one I'll do down here. And then I will come back up with 7 and 8 up here on this. That's my first 7 and 8. So when I actually get to graph it myself, same as usual. I'm going to graph my y-intercept first. Okay? Yeah, the bottom number 7. Sorry, I see that I'm screwy on my numbers. And then I'm going to go slope from the y-intercept. So here's how this works. So in bottom number 7, which one of those numbers is my y-intercept? Okay, the 1 is. So if my y-intercept is 1, and you don't have to write all this out when you're doing it on your homework, I just want you to have this to look back at if you get confused and know what's what. So here's my y. 1 would be just go up 1. I'll put a dot. Then my slope should always be a fraction. If it's not, how do I turn 2 into a fraction? Put it over 1. So then I got to think for a second. Say, okay, 2. Is that going to be up or down? If my rise is 2 and it's positive, that's up. Okay, but don't move yet with it. My 1 on the bottom is positive 1. Is that right or left? That's right. So from this point, from my y-intercept, I'm going to go up 2 and right 1. If I wanted to put another dot to be accurate, I'd just do the same thing. I'd go up 2 and right 1. And draw my line through. But to be able to do this, I have to have y on a side by itself. So for instance, hey, Allie asked about number 9. My first job in number 9, before I can do my stuff, yeah, I've got to get this y alone. That's right. I've got to subtract the 1x from both sides. So when I do that, that's 2y equals negative 1x minus 1. And then right, I got to divide by 2 to get the y by itself. So when I finally I agree. You're like, ooh, fractions, yuck. Okay? This is the equation we're working with. So now, here's where it gets interesting. So my first step is to plot the y-intercept, which is -1/2. So, okay, negative for my y-intercept. Am I going to go up or down? Down. Okay, down. Where is 1/2? Okay, between 0 and -1 is where I'm going to find -1/2. So that's going to be my first point. Once I get that done, my next job is my slope, which is -1/2. Whenever you see a negative slope, you can pick where you want the negative to be, because it like to be in one place. So a -1 is down. Which way is over? To the right. Okay. So from that first point that I made, okay, don't start over at the beginning. That first point, I'm going to go down 1 and right 2. And then if I wanted to make another one, I could. Down 1, right 2. Draw my line through that. Okay. All right, how are we doing here so far? I know it's several different ways of doing the same thing. That's why we kind of are going to take a look here. I'm going to flip to the back for a second here. Let's see what's happening here. So if we flip to the back, I'm going to let you do one thing right off the bat. 12 through 14. 12 through 14. Yes, we're keeping life simple right now. Okay. Now 10 and 11. Now, they could be easy. We have to think back to Mr. Slope guy here for a minute. When I have y equals 3, okay, which direction do I go to get to where y equals 3? Okay, right here. Now, here's the thing that's tricky. When it says y equals 3, anywhere across here, y equals 3. So if you remember Mr. Slope guy's mouth, okay, was that flat line, and we have the zeros on the end, like his cheeks or his dimples. Anytime I see y equals to just a number, go to that value for y and just draw a horizontal line. And it's always going to be a horizontal line. That's never going to change. It's just y and a number. If, though, it's x and a number. Yeah, which direction do I go to get to where x is -2? To the left. Put a dot. And it's a vertical line because that's where x always is going to equal 2. So, I have one question before we get into the actual work with this. Flip this back over. Do we want to take a look, number like 7 or 8, or the second number 8? We just want to reinforce something. Because I know sometimes an example or two is enough, sometimes not so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a peek then. I'll kind of leave this, I'll get this up soon. Okay, so here's what we've got going. Here they're going to give us the equation, and we're going to give it some information, and then we're going to graph it. So, for instance, what's my slope in number 1? Okay, 1/1. If I don't see a number in front of my x, we always assume that it's 1/1. What's my y-intercept? 3, because it's always the number on the end that's hanging out. But here's what I need to know. Okay, I always graph the y-intercept first. I always go slope second. So here's my deal. Okay, so right, my y-intercept ordered pair would be 0, 3. But let's get down to the actual graphing here. If I do my y-intercept first and it's positive 3, which way am I going to go 3 and then put a point? Okay, up. And I'm sorry for my little tiny graph here. We're going to go up 3 and put a point. If I got to go super zoom here in a minute, I will. Actually, let's try that. Okay, slightly better. So once I get there, what does my slope tell me? What directions am I going to be going? Okay, which way is over? Okay, so that's my bottom. I'm only going right 1. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go up 1 and right 1 and put a dot. And if I wanted to, I could keep doing that all the way through. Up and right, up and right, up and right. Which could be very crowded to this particular graph, and then draw a line through it. Got to draw the line through, because we're doing this to learn how to graph lines. Because there'll get to be a point where we're graphing 2 lines on the graph at the same time to see where they connect. So we really need to work on making sure we draw the line through. Now, there's one more on this side I want to take a peek at. I want to drop down to number 4. So I want to make sure we don't have any twists thrown at us here. So if we move down to 4, okay, first thing is my slope. What's my slope in number 4? And if I want to make it a fraction, okay, so this number in front of x is always my slope. It's always my m. What's my y-intercept or my b going to be? What's my b going to be? -5. Okay. So, we go to graph. We're always doing the y-intercept first. So which direction am I going to be heading 5? Down. My only choices for the y-intercept are up or down. In this case, we're going to go with the down. Negative. So from there is where I do my slope, but the question still remains. What does this 2 and 1 tell me directionally where I'm going for slope? Okay, up 2, right 1. Up 2, right 1. And if I wanted to make another dot, I just go up 2 and right 1 again. And I'm good. And again, my y-intercept is always just going to be 0 in my y value. That's a good thing to be able to know, which is why we're going to kind of work through this that way. Okay. So that's all we're doing on this side. Label the slope and y-intercept, plot them on the graph, good. On the back is similar to what we've been doing on the other sheet. Okay? So for instance, up here at the top, it says find the slope of the graph. Now you'll notice there's not dots on these already. Let's help you. Let's get the dots put on these, and then we can go from there a little bit. So I'm just going to get you some dots, so you can kind of take your pick here on which ones that you want to use when you're figuring out your slope. Okay, so I'll get some dots on there for you. This one is the homework one. Okay. Back on the other side, it's just always going to be 0 and wherever the y-intercept is. So like that last one we did, it's 0, -5. Number 4, was it? 5? Number 4. 0, -5. You could. On 19, depending on which dots you use, if you use the two that are closest together, you might go up 1 and over 1, so your slope would be 1 over 1. Nope. Right. So that's an option. Okay? When it says graph the line, it's the same thing that we were just doing before. So like if we're doing 22, my y-intercept is going to get done first, slope gets done second. Which number there's my y-intercept? 4 is, okay? So if 4 is my y-intercept, which way am I going to go? 4, okay? So I go up 4, nice big dot in there. So then my slope, I don't have a lot of choices here, is going to be negative 2 over 3. Okay, which means I go 2 down and 3 to the right. So start back at the dot I already made. Down 2, 3, right. And that's all I'm doing. Not trying to make life incredibly difficult. Just trying to get us a little bit of a kickstart on some of this stuff. Somebody asked me from the door, I don't remember who, when the next quiz is going to be. We're probably looking early next week, probably around Tuesday or Wednesday or so. Yep, next week. Looking at this quiz, probably basically on stuff like this where we're doing slopes and intercepts and graphing with them and stuff like that. We're kind of coming down the home stretch here towards finals. So we're going to have one more test and probably one more quiz. And then we'll be into finals review time.